FAU comes into this season in a weird state. There's a lot of new going around in Boca Raton, probably the first time for the city. But at the same time, the core of the Owls is still there. New head coach, new starting quarterback, new conference to call home in the AAC, but some familiar teams on their schedule and a lot of returning starters. What does this mean for the team? Well, some might say chaos will ensue, and it might. But that pressure might just create a diamond in the rough, a dark horse if you will, that AAC teams should be feared of for this year and years to come. My name is Kevin, and in this video, I'll be looking at the Florida Atlantic Owls and their coaching staff, offense, defense, and their schedule to try and predict where they will end up come December. Alright, let's get right into it. Willie Taggart wasn't a bad fit for AAU, but he was no Lane Kiffin, and so his time went out with a dud. But now Tom Herman comes in, and with him, he brings a ton of success and coaching prowess. In his previous head coaching jobs at Houston and Texas, he went 52-22 and had never had a losing season. In some people's minds, he failed in Texas, never having reached the gargantuan standards Longhorns fans and administration set for him. But the fact was that he won, and now with FAU, he looks to win again. His new offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Charlie Frye is familiar with success, as he previously coached at Penn State, the Miami Dolphins, and Central Michigan, a third line we'll see later on. He and Herman will look to cook up an up-tempo offense that'll be sure to wow fans, both new and old. And Rock Bellantoni, great name by the way, jeez, comes in for a second stint as defensive coordinator at FAU, the first of which saw him coach up Trey Hendrickson to be a Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. And now for the offense, and now that 2-year starter N'Kosi Perry and ultimate Nepo baby Willie Taggart Jr. are gone, the starting quarterback spot is wide open for anyone to take, and as of now, there seems to be 2 players making a strong case for it. Let's start with Casey Thompson, the former Texas and Nebraska starting quarterback. The 24-year-old dual threat comes to FAU in search of a last chance at success and a reconnection with Herman, as they were both at Texas together for a brief stint. The upside with Thompson, his potential and his big playability. I know it's weird to say that a graduate student senior has potential, but if you look at his past 3 seasons, he's had moments of success and even heroism. Likewise, the lack of a breakout up until now is his downside. As a starter, he's gone 8-12, and towards the end of last year, his play got better, but FAU probably doesn't have time for that, especially with Daniel Richardson vying for the same job. Richardson comes in as a Central Michigan transfer who has also started his previous 2 seasons. He's kind of the opposite as Thompson, as he's a pocket passer more so that went 15-9 as a starter, but his team did have a down year last year. We'll see who wins the job, or if it'll be sort of like a Michigan situation where they both start and then it happens, or whatever the hell that was. But either way, the Owls will have at least a capable quarterback there, which is more than they could say after losing Perry. And yeah, whoever wins the starting job will get to work with a ton of great weapons, starting with their backfield. Larry McCammon III had over 1,000 yards last year, Zuberi Mobley also comes back with 500 yards, and Kobe Lewis also went to Central Michigan, see? And was also a 1,000-yard rusher before injuries hampered him. McCammon will likely be the starter, but don't be the least bit surprised if we get a rotation down there in Boca. And at receiver, they lose big-time threat Jamal Erdine to Purdue, but besides that, they're keeping the core intact. LaJohntay Webster comes back as their leading receiver, who they occasionally use in the run game, so look out for that. And Jaquan Burton, keep an eye out for this guy. He could be in the NFL in the next couple years if his production this year matches the hype of his 40 time. And the offensive line was great last year, and it will probably be great this year. They've got leadership all around the arc, like tackle Chaz Neal and guard Marquise Robinson. And now comes the defense, and this is where the whole blessing and curse thing I mentioned before comes into play. The good, a lot of starters are back. The bad, well, they were, by all means of the definition, bad. They were 19th worst in the country in yards per play and 25th worst in yards per game. Yes, they could create turnovers at a decent rate, but that doesn't mean anything when the consistency of them lies in the negative. The increase in production has to start up front, as 15 players combined for 18 sacks last year. All the pass rushers return, including Courtney McBride and Chris Jones on the edge, and Evan Anderson and Latrell Dreen in the middle. But again, they gotta break out, or else they'll be allowing yards for days. At linebacker, seniority is the name of the game, especially with middle linebacker Eddie Williams. He's a bit undersized at 6'1", 200 pounds, but when he's in the game, he's quick and feisty to get a tackle anywhere on the field. And the secondary was gonna be a strong suit for the Owls, and in some respects it still is. But the loss of strong safety Teja Young to Ole Miss is absolutely key. Leading tackler and partner in crime last year, Armani Eli Adams will look to hold down that title without him, and Dwight Toombs should be a great replacement anyway. Also, shout out to Smoke Mungin, not only because he's a great corner, but that's a sick ass name. We're like 2 for 2 here. And now that the coaches and players are out of the way, let's look at the schedule. Here I have on screen the 12 games they're playing, and here I have the probabilities put out by ESPN on how likely FAU is to win the game. Obviously, Monmouth is a 99% guaranteed win, and the Ohio game afterwards should be a revenge game of sorts, after what happened last year. After that, they have 2 Power 5 games that don't seem all that likely for them to win, although Illinois might just be a sleeper game. And then they get into their first year of conference play in the American Athletic Conference. Starting out their first 2 games, they'll be favored in, and I'm just going to pause it right here and speak on behalf of all FAU fans in saying that USF is not 55-45. Bruh. I know they're the new regional rival as announced by the AAC, but if the talent disparity is anything close to last year, then the Owls should be trouncing all over USF, just plain and simple. Alright, now back to it. They then play a UTSA team at home that's coming off of back-to-back Conference USA championships and has a ton of returning talent. It'll be a hard one to win if I'm being totally honest. Possible, but really hard. They then have Charlotte, which, unless Biff Poggi does some insane gymnastics, it should be an easy win. And then they come across the toughest part of their schedule, their last 4 games. Up until this point, they've been favored pretty heavily in every game, but now they're looking at 2-2 odds. UAB has some serious momentum with Trent Dilfer at the helm. Sure, I mean, they're losing a ton of talent, but it looks like from the outside in, they're regaining it and then some. ECU is also losing some talent, dynamic duo Holter Allers and Keaton Mitchell to be a few. They'll still be tough, but they'll also still be rebuilding. Tulane is, well, Tulane, and they're riding a huge wave from last year, absolutely pun intended there. And Rice has some boomer bust potential with how they ended last year. So for the ceiling of the team, you might think it might be like 6 or 7 games, or at least like outside people might think that, but honestly, I think it should be something closer to like 8 or 9. Remember, and if you look at their schedule from last year, this team was 9 points away and a 2-point failed conversion away against Purdue from being 9-3 instead of 5-7. But of course, every room where there is a ceiling, there also must be a floor, and unfortunately, I could see some definite bust potential here for the Owls. The bust situation here comes into play, I think, if Ohio somehow beats them. In that case, they'll likely be 1-3 going into conference play on 3 straight losses. And if they go 4-4 at worst, it's all a dud. Worst case scenario though, they go 2-6 and end up with a 3-9 record. So that's a pretty big floor and ceiling disparity. 6 wins right there. So what do I think will happen? Drumroll please. Definitely not the 3-win option. In fact, I'm leaning towards the winning side and I'd say they'll get like 7 or 8 wins. Herman hasn't had a losing season yet, and I don't think he'll start out his first year in Boca Raton by breaking that streak. They're favored in 7, and I think if they play their cards right, they'll take that game against UAB. Alright, now to end this video, I gotta say one thing. College football is a beautiful thing that I love covering whenever I get the chance. Just through a couple hours of research, I found some great storylines from FAU, 1 out of 133 FBS teams this year, that I'm now invested in. I love doing this. Looking into teams I never would have thought to analyze before and seeing familiar faces, and teams that I can get hype about come late August, September. That boomer bust that I mentioned before, that's what makes FAU and all of college football amazing to watch. If you're watching this now, thank you. Really. The positivity left by likes and views and comments on videos and tweets is what keeps me doing this. Anyway, yeah, the 7-8 win FAU Owls. I like the sound of that. And thank y'all for watching.